Hey everyone, how are you? So this part is a bonus part in the Modern Angular e-commerce series that I've been building. So we completed the front end finally in the last part, and I hope you enjoyed all of that part. We had this nice looking e-commerce store with all of the bells and whistles that an e-commerce store has. But there is one issue that needs to be resolved, and that is if you're going to deploy this e-commerce app on your own server using Vercel, using Cloudflare, or any other service provider, you're going to see that the search engines are going to have a tough time indexing this. And that is because this is a client-side application, okay? So in this bonus video, I'm going to tell you all about SSR or server-side rendering. This is going to be your guide to adding SSR to your Angular application. So we're going to discuss what is SSR, why do we need SSR for this, especially for our e-commerce app, and we're going to convert this store to SSR so that it can be discoverable and more easily indexable by search engines. And in the process, we're going to also look at a hybrid strategy in which we can actually specify different strategies for different routes of our e-commerce application and also in the end test it out fully so that we can see whether it's working or not. So a lot to come in this guide. Let's get started. But before that, if you want the final code with the SSR implemented and the SEO also implemented, which I'm going to do in the next video, you will find the link in the description. Now, if you purchase this from my shop, you are going to directly support this channel and any content that I create so that I can keep creating more content like this. Thank you all for your support. Okay, so let us start this video by discussing what is SSR logically. Now, if you're wondering, SSR is server-side rendering. And this means that in a graphical form, you have your browser and you send a request to your website or your server to actually get this, your e-commerce app in our case. And so the server basically renders everything on the server side, the whole page, HTML, CSS, and any JavaScript. And then it sends back the rendered HTML to the browser directly, okay? Now, this is a bit different from client-side rendering. Now, client-side rendering is the default in Angular and in all single-page application frameworks, even in React and Vue and all of these JavaScript frameworks. The typical way is client-side rendering, where what happens is you have your browser, you send a request to the server, and the server basically sends just a basic application shell back, not with all of the HTML content of that specific page. And then what happens is that the browser uses JavaScript to render the whole HTML, the whole DOM on the client side, okay? So in this case, the browser has to do a lot of work, but in this case, in server-side rendering, the server basically does all of the work and it sends the rendered HTML back. But how do we actually know what rendering is being used? Well, an easy way to do that is to actually just go in your page source here. So if you right click here and you do view page source here, you're going to see a very minimal HTML. So very little HTML, just the head. And then we have the body and app root. In Angular, for example, we have app root. And then in JavaScript, we have this main.js, which actually contains all of the JavaScript that we need for rendering it. And it basically renders this UI that we have here for that specific page. So in effect, this is client-side rendering. But you'll wonder, we know what is SSR, but why do we actually need it? The biggest reason is basically that it is faster and easier to index for search engines. And now, so this is not needed in all applications. So if you have applications, Angular applications, which are hidden behind a login, so you need a login for that. You have SaaS applications. In those cases, you actually don't need SSR that much. So this is only best for apps that need to appear in search. For example, our e-commerce app in this case, we want our e-commerce application, this whole page, this listing page, and the individual product pages to be listed in your search engine. Why? Because you want users to be actually able to search these products and get our store in the search engines so that the users can get it directly from that. So it becomes an acquisition channel for our store. So in this case, then the best strategy to use will be to add SSR to our Angular application. Now, it's not needed as I before for all apps, not needed for apps which are behind login. So we have to be mindful of this fact. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Okay, great. So we want to add SSR to our e-commerce application for all the reasons that I mentioned. How do we do that? Well, in recent Angular versions, I think in Angular version 17 or 18, this has become really, really simple to do. Earlier, we had to do a lot of complex stuff related to Angular Universal, and it was really clunky. But now we have this one command we need to run, that is ng add Angular SSR. And we can do it when we are creating our Angular application as well. If you remember, we had a prompt initially when we created this application that if we needed to add SSR, we could have done it at that point. But we can also do it in the middle when we have implemented something. We can add Angular SSR at that point as well. So that is what we are going to do right now. So let's add this in our application. Okay, so we are in our code now, and as you can see, we have the latest Angular version. I've updated it to the latest Angular version 21, which has just been released last week. So we're going to do ng add Angular SSR, and let's see what it does. So it's finding the package version. It found the latest version 21.0.2 here. And once we do y, let's see what it does. It's going to add some files here. So basically what it does is it adds a server.ts file and other corresponding files in which it allows the server to actually render your Angular application on the server, right? So as you can see, it has packages installed successfully, and let's go and see what it has added. So if you go in your source here, you're going to see aside from main.ts, we have main.server.ts, and then we have a server.ts as well, all right? And then in app, you're going to see that we have your root server, and you're going to have your config server file here, okay? So all of these things are related to server-side rendering. Okay, if you go in your package.json, you're going to see a new command here added here, serve SSR ngx full stack e-commerce. So this is basically the command that you can use to locally test your server-side rendered application. So at this point, I think you can test your server-side rendered application to see whether it works. First, we need to build our application when we actually want to test it out, because it's going to use Node and is going to go in the distribution folder and in your server folder here, which is not created yet, okay? So we need to create that, we need to run the ng build command to actually create a production build of your application. Okay, so it says here that it has pre-rendered zero static roots and all of that stuff, but we are getting an error here and it's saying local storage is not defined. And so this is one thing that you need to be careful of when you're doing server-side rendering, that any browser-specific APIs should not be used. And I suspect that this is being used in the local storage adapter that we added to the Signal store to actually add local storage synchronization. So we're going to go in my e-commerce store here, and I'm going to just comment that out for the timing so that we can get it working. So I'm going to comment this with storage sync out here like this, and let's save this. And now I'm going to try this again. So I'm going to do ng build. Let's see whether it builds successfully again. Okay, so now you don't see that local storage error. We're getting some errors related to the product's category name and the product ID root. And that is because if you go in your server roots, which basically specify how your roots are going to be rendered, and you can specify really granularly which root should be rendered in what way, you have actually the default basically is the pre-render mode, all right? Now, there is client-side rendering in which everything renders on the client side. There is server-side rendering in which your whole root or your page specifically, it renders on the server side completely. But there's also pre-rendering. Now, pre-rendering is also called static site generation. So what this does is basically it renders your HTML on the build time, all right, when you are building it, and it's great for static pages. But in our cases, most of our application is dynamic. So what we're going to do is we are going to just make this server rendered here as well. So server rendered here and for all paths here, okay? So that all our paths are server rendered automatically. So we're going to save this and we're going to try this again. And now you can see that we have our successful build here. We have pre-rendered zero static roots because we didn't use any pre-rendering here for any roots. And there's a warning for the bundle. And there's an output location in your dist ngx full stack e-commerce. So if you go in your dist here, you're going to see we have your browser and we have your server package here. Great. So now we can run that package or JSON, this command here, and let's copy this and let's do npm run. Let's paste this, serve SSR, and now you can see that Node Express server is listening on HTTP localhost 4000. So this is the server-side rendered version of our application. So let's test that out. And now if you go in your application here like this, you're going to do localhost, not 4200, but 4000. And let's try to run that. And you can see now that we have our application running as before. Everything is running just like we wanted it to. But what is the difference now? As I said before, you need to inspect the page source. So let's refresh this and let's inspect the page source here again. And now you can see that our page source has much more content initially. And if you go down here, you can see that we have all of this. This app root is not empty here. We have all of our HTML rendered out of the box. Okay, so this means that every rendering is happening on the server side. Another way to test this out is basically just to go in your network tab here. And in your network tab, if you refresh, make sure this all is selected here. And when you refresh this, you're going to see this all HTML. Once you select this, you're going to see that you have this whole all HTML rendered a bit problematically, but we have this all HTML here sent from the server correctly. Okay, you have this all thing. So this means your server-side rendering is working, and it is working on all routes. So if you also refresh this, for example, this product detail route, once you refresh this, you're going to see that you are getting this product detail page, and it is also server-side rendered. Great. So server-side rendering works, but we can take it one step further because we want to really optimize our application and different routes based on our different strategies that we want to use for rendering. So I'm going to now tell you about the different server routes that we can use and how we can use it in our e-commerce application. So there is an application routes file, which is for the client-side application, client-side rendering, but there's also a server route file, which actually tells you which routes you want to render in what way. So currently we did just catch all route for server-side rendering, but we actually want to make it more granular and more optimized for our purposes. So let me tell you about a hybrid strategy that we can use. So Angular SSR, the latest version, it makes it really easy. And so what we want to do, the strategy we would want to use is that this product category page that we have here, I want this products category page for each of the category to be actually pre-rendered or static site generated. So because this is going to change less frequently, so I want it to be indexed really quickly using client side, using static site generation or pre-rendered pages on the build time. All right. So because we just have 5 categories, it's not going to be a big load on the server when we build it. So it's not going to increase our build times by a lot. So let's do this for our path here. So what we're going to do here is that above this, we are going to add our path here, and our path here is then going to be products and category name. And here we're going to say render mode, not server, but we're going to say pre-render. Okay. Now, as you can see here that we have this dynamic sort of route here. So we have this category name passed on to us by the root, and we need to cater for that in our application as well, in our root as well. So for that, we have get pre-render params function that we can actually use. And this was actually the error that we were getting, that if you have pre-rendered and there is a dynamic route with dynamic parameters, we need to have a pre-render params function so that Angular knows what to do at build time. All right. So in pre-render params, we are going to create this function here, and I'm going to just define this here. And here we're going to, first we need to inject our service that we are using to get the categories. Now, as it turns out, we're just keeping a sort of a static list of categories in our application. So what we're going to do is we are going to shift that, and we're going to create a new service here. Let's call this new service as the category service, or let's say category API or TS, and let's do injectable root here, and we have your category API. And then we have your categories here in the form of, we don't even need signals here. We can just use a simple array at this point. Okay. And we can then get categories and return these categories as it is. Okay. And then we can change all of these things that we have, and we can use this category API in our here. So what we're going to do is cat service and inject category API here. All right. And then we are going to do name, and these names are going to be cat service dot get categories like this. Okay, we can also make this await if you'd like to, async await if you'd like to, because maybe we want to get it from your server side or from some dynamic thing, but currently we just have this at this point. And then we need to just return the names dot map, and we can just specify the category name parameter. It has to be the same name, and we can give the name here like this. And let's say we can actually just give this, we can inject this here, and we also need to make this async just in case. Okay, great. So by definition, it needs to be async because it can be asynchronous. So we are done with this page. Okay, and let's try this out, how this works. So now we're gonna do the same thing again. And now when we run ng build here, again, we're going to see something different in our case. Okay, so now you see something different here. It's built successfully, but you can now see we have pre-rendered 5 static routes. So it got all of the categories, it generated all of the pages at build time, and it pre-rendered those pages. And now if you go in your server here, you're going to see, or sorry, in your browser here, you're going to see that we have a products folder and all of these pages have been pre-rendered. Now pre-rendered is really good for static pages or for pages which you want to be indexed really quickly, and it really makes it helpful for it to be cached on CDNs as well and be served really quickly to your users. Okay, so in this case we have these 5 static root, and now if you're going to test it out, you're going to see that we get these category roots directly here. And then after that, we also want to then deal with the product detail page. Now, if we add the same pre-rendering to your product details page, there will be an issue that once you click on this product details page, what if the price changes dynamically? What if the review changes dynamically? So for this product detail page, we actually want to use a different strategy. And so we want to use pure server-side rendering so that whenever the user wants to access a product page, or the search engine crawler wants to access a product page, we always get the latest fresh data. And the best way to do that is to use server-side rendering. So what we're going to do is, for this part, what we're going to do, we're going to do server-side rendering here. In fact, we don't need to do anything here specifically, because automatically we have everything that is not specified here to be rendered on the server. So we're just going to let it be. Okay, now what would happen to all of those routes that we have here for the cart? For example, we have the wish list page here. We also have the wish list page here, which we cannot go here right now because it's not working anymore. And we have the add to cart page, we have the checkout page, we have all of those pages. Now those pages are basically neither required to be server-side rendered because we don't want them to be indexable, neither do we want it to be pre-rendered. So in those cases, we can specify that they only be client-side rendered, all right? So it only renders on the client side. We don't want the server to be overloaded with those requests. So what we're going to do is we're going to add these specific root and we're going to make them client-side rendered, okay? So we have this wish list and we have the cart, we have the checkout, we have the order success page. Now these are all dynamic pages, which will most probably also happen when we are logged in. So they don't need to be indexable by search engines, and it doesn't bring us any benefit. So we make it render mode.client here like this. Okay, so now let's save this and we're going to build it again, and let's finally test everything out to see whether this is working fine. So we're going to do ng build, and it's built and successfully pre-rendered 5 static routes. And we're going to then do the same thing, npm run serve SSR ng full stack ecommerce, and it says that we have your server listening on localhost 4, and let's refresh this. And now you can see your app works fine. Let's also test it out whether it's working as you wanted on a route basis. So for example, this route, this is the products category route, so this should be pre-rendered, and if we refresh this, you're gonna see that indeed we are getting all of the HTML rendered at compile time because it was pre-rendered, all right? And then if you go to your product detail page here like this and you refresh this, you're gonna see that we have this one here, but and you can see that we have all of the product data here as well. All of that data that we have for the specific product, including all of the reviews for that product, all right? So this works fine as well. And thirdly, let's also try out the wish list. If you're going to refresh this, you're going to see it's empty, obviously, because we have removed the state saving in local storage. But if we, for example, check out this and we try to refresh it again and we check out this, you're going to see that we get this wish list. But now this is the difference. You can see that it's empty. And if you, for example, check out the page source here, you're going to see the same thing here. It's app root. So there's no HTML here. So only this wishlist route and this cart route. And if you refresh the cart as well, you're going to see the same thing. Let's do it again. You can see we have the cart and it's empty as well. So in these cases, it will be client-side rendered. So the server is only going to return the app shell, and Angular is going to render everything on the client side just like we needed. So this is the hybrid approach, and it is the best approach that you can use based on your own application and on specific routes in your application. Okay, so at this point, our server-side rendering, CSR, and all of that stuff is set up for your Modern Angular e-commerce website. Now you can go ahead and deploy it on any of the server providers. Obviously, you might need to do some sort of small tweaks here and there to actually get that deployment to work correctly, because oftentimes we need to redirect all of the routes to your functions on that specific provider. For example, in Vercel, you might need to add a vercel.json file. In the final code, obviously, I have it deployed on Vercel in the final app if you would like to see here. So this is basically deployed on Vercel, as you can see. So this is in the final app, and for that, obviously, you can check out the link in the description if you want access to that code. Now, in the next part, I'm going to add another important feature that is linked to server-side rendering and search engine indexing. So just making your app SSR is not enough. This is going to get your site indexed, but for SEO optimization, if you are an SEO expert, or even if you're not, you might be aware of things that you need to do. You need to set the title, you need to set the description, you need to set the canonical link and the OG tags and all of that stuff. So how do you actually do it in an Angular application? We're going to discuss a strategy using an SEO service, and all of that is going to come in the next bonus video that I have. So watch out for that, and I'll see you next time in that next video.